All right, welcome in to Hail. Oh, Hail to the Podcast is the wrong show. Welcome into Rise to the Victors for all the
This is
kids at
great.
home who
Great
keep up
start.
with. Yeah, hot start. Michigan beat Rutgers. That's why that's what we're talking about today. Doesn't matter what the podcast show is called. Doesn't matter what the name is. Michigan beat Rutgers. A game that was, I don't know, kind of like prototypical of a good team on the road late in the season. Michigan struggles in the first half, looks vulnerable, obviously went in trailing, and then comes out and just dominates, especially defensively. Jesse Minter kind of flexes his chops a bit and what he can do in the game of halftime adjustments. We are Maize and Blue Review. You can come to michigan.rivals.com and join us today for $9.99 and join a community of Michigan fans, intel and analysis. We have it all: stories, film breakdowns, this, that, and the other thing, and everything in between over at michigan.rivals.com. So make sure you come join us today if you're a diehard Michigan fan. No place you'd rather be. Now, moving on from the housekeeping, follow us on Twitter, Michigan Rivals. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Maize Blue Review. I'm Brandon Justice. If you're watching, to my right is Josh Henschke, and below me is Brock Heilig. We are Maize and Blue Review, and we're talking about Michigan and Rutgers here for Rise to the Victors, not Hail to the Podcast. So, Josh, just your thoughts on what you saw on Saturday, a basic synopsis of the game, and where you think things went right for Michigan, and what led to the turning point that they came out with at halftime.
Yeah, I just think Michigan is a second half team. I mean, all year, and I think last year too, they really got that identity of kind of coming out of halftime locker room a completely different team, and they certainly looked that way yesterday, or excuse me, on Saturday. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you can really say about the first half. I mean, it was just bad. I mean, it was a bad football all around. Excuse me, I'm gonna turn my light differently here, but it's just bad all around. Uncharacteristic mistakes on special teams. The offensive line, you could tell that people were missing. I mean, I think that's the major takeaway here, is that you could tell that Michigan had guys rested. However, Jesse Minter remains elite in terms of, his adjustments. And I got to give the defensive staff credit too. It's not just Minter making these adjustments. It's Klink and Elston and a bunch of other guys having suggestions too. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Michigan's identity is fairly kind of in stone, that they're a second half team. And, that's about dominating of the third quarter as you can get. Back-to-back interceptions by Michael Barrett. One of those is a pick six. It's kind of good to see Michigan break that dam a little bit in terms of getting some turnovers that, they've been so close on multiple times throughout the year, and they've finally capitalized on opportunities. I think that's the big big takeaway from this game, especially in the second half, is that they capitalized on opportunities. Near perfect in the red zone from a touchdown to field goal perspective. That was really good to see. And, I'm not ready to claim that the red zone woes are fixed, but I mean, that was certainly a step in the right direction, getting it going almost perfect in the red zone. But yeah, I mean, a great second half performance that, erased a really not so great first half performance. So, and JJ McCarthy, great job standing up, getting hit, not getting rattled. The moment is never too big for him. And what can you say about Blake Corum too? I mean, another 100-yard game, two touchdowns. It's just, guys stepped up when they needed to. Will Johnson interception, a really nice one that he high pointed, really showed off his athletic ability. I mean, there's just guys made plays when it counted. And yeah, I mean, this team is on a collision course with Ohio State against at the end of the year. So, yeah, overall, I mean, 52-17 win. I mean,
14. Oh yeah, 17-7.
52-17 win. I think, yeah, it's other than the first half, which, quickly got erased. There's a lot more positives than negatives for sure.
A little bit of a numbers look at the game. 282 rushing yards for Michigan to Rutgers' 14 rushing yards. Michigan continues to be a tremendous rush defense, which looks like that will be its best counter against Ohio State later this month. 21 first downs for Michigan to Rutgers' 5. Rutgers was 3 of 13 on third down offensively. Michigan was 7 of 7 in the red zone, 6 touchdowns, 1 field goal, and Michigan had 21 points off of turnovers. If you had to pick players of the game, I think it kind of starts and ends with Mike Barrett, right? I mean, 2 game-changing picks, really flipped the game on its head and, put Michigan in a place where it was kind of running away with things seemingly in the middle of the third quarter after trailing at halftime, which was kind of surreal to see how, I guess, materialize in the moment. But when it happened, you're like, okay, this is kind of what you expected, right? When coming into this game, but based on how the game was being played until that point, it's not what you expected. But of course, halftime adjustments for both sides of the ball for Michigan, but especially defensively. Brock, just curious on what you think for Michigan's second half performance, what they were able to do defensively, anything that you might have saw that wasn't working for them in the first half that did in the second half.
Yeah, going back to your point about Michael Barrett, I mean, you got to give the kid credit. He easily could have gotten way down on himself after he basically was the sole factor of the blocked punt and the touchdown there for Rutgers. He easily could have hung his head and had a terrible rest of the game, right? But he bounced back in a huge way. 2 interceptions, as you mentioned, Josh, one of them for a pick 6. And then Will Johnson had the one, I think 2 drives later there in the second half. And yeah, I think you just got to give all the credit to Jesse Minter, because this is a big theme in Michigan's dominance in the Big Ten so far has been, hey, the first half's not going so great. It's a close game, and Michigan's not really going out there and dominating like many people would hope they would. And then they come out in the second half and look like national championship contenders with Minter and how he's working with the defense. And you saw it too with Mike Morris and the defensive line getting after Wimsett there in the second half. Mike Morris did a sack. I can't remember if anyone else had one, but they were forcing pressure, and that was forcing the quarterback to make some bad throws, which led to the interceptions. So I think all the credit goes to Minter. Of course, some of it goes to Barrett for not getting down on himself. And one play that really stood out to me was it was a slant play, I think, and Will Johnson kind of lost coverage and whiffed on the tackle. And you see the Rutgers receiver running down the middle of the field, and out of nowhere comes Rod Moore, like just full steam ahead down the middle of the field. DJ Turner comes over top too, and just the hustle play to chase that receiver down was really impressive to me. So the defense gets a lot of credit, and I think they could be a problem for Ohio State, which some people may not have expected at the beginning of the season.
In the run game, Michigan continues to shine offensively. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards had the exact same amount of rushing yards. They each had 109. That means Blake Corum continued his streak of running for 100 yards plus in each Big Ten game this season. A pretty remarkable feat. As we know, he went and eclipsed over 1,000. I believe that was against Michigan State, or it might have been Penn State. Was it Michigan State where he eclipsed 1,000?
It's a good question.
I'm not quite sure.
I can't remember.
I think it was Michigan.
I think it was Michigan
Might have been
State.
Penn State.
It was one of those two.
I
It's a
thought
state.
too,
It's a state college.
Either way, he's on his way to another monstrous game next week, I would assume, against Nebraska, which we'll touch on later in the week. But both had 109 yards exactly. Again, Corum 100 plus in every Big Ten game. Michigan had 9 different rushers on Saturday too, which I thought was interesting. A lot of guys carrying the ball. Obviously, garbage time. We saw Davis Warren technically get a carry. We saw C.J. Stokes get a few carries. We saw Isaiah Gash get a carry. So, a bit inflated over garbage time, but still Michigan spreading the ball out around there. Now, an emphasis, we could sit here and talk about the run game all day. We won't. Michigan's running backs are really good, both really talented. Donovan Edwards showed how dangerous he is as a receiver a couple of times this year, but he really put it on tape on Saturday. Shows he's pretty much a clear mismatch in most scenarios. Michigan, obviously, now we're getting to that point where they're going to try and throw some things in there that are work out the kinks. And it looked like that set that they ran where they would set up with Donovan's next to JJ and then split him out, or just start with him split out. We saw a lot of those sets were designed specifically around him. So what that makes me wonder is if we see those sets again, what type of wrinkles and counters they might have to break tendency on that and maybe, flip a team on its head like an Ohio State, who will probably see that on tape. But let's switch the conversation over to, I guess, concern. I don't know. And that's the question I'm going to ask you guys is, are you concerned about JJ McCarthy? I mean, he was 13 to 27. Rutgers's coverage is not bad, but not great. It's just, you expect him to have a big game. We kept saying he was going to have a big game. Michigan is a run team, so like his success most time, anytime Michigan has a lead in the second half, like JJ McCarthy doesn't need to throw and probably isn't going to throw. A lot of people like to do the whole like comp game with like how many yards he's throwing for versus like a CJ Stroud. Those two offenses are totally different, like completely. So it's just not a fair comparison. But at the same time, JJ has been on point, dead eye accuracy all season, the most accurate passer in the country. I don't know if that's going to hold up this week because, 13 to 27, right? I think that's like 40-ish%. Let me see where that's at. So 48%. So he was under 50% this week after hovering in the mid 70s to upper 70s all season. Are you guys concerned? I guess we'll start with Josh. Are you concerned about JJ McCarthy? We keep saying the same things every week. Like, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when with JJ. So like, we see the talent. We see the arm talent. We know how good he is on his legs. The football IQ is there. I mean, is it pretty much just he's just, I don't know, like he's missing these deep balls. He's missing some throws long that aren't too long, but he's missing them terribly. Like, what is it? What do you think it is? Is it youth or I'm going to just give you the open floor here, Josh. What is there a concern with JJ? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned. I think the concern is that, there's a lack of experience, really. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, he's still very much trying to feel things out and try to figure out what he is as a passer. And I want to bring up a comment here that I think is really good and kind of really explains it, that what I'm kind of thinking here. And I'll read it for those who are listening to the podcast and not watching. It says, I think we only struggled because JH actually gave JJ a chance to establish himself and stuck with it in the second half. He's letting him get a feel for his passing identity. I 100% agree with that. 100%. I mean, I don't know if I'd even say it struggled, because his receivers at multiple points did not do him any favors catching the ball. I mean, like a good 4 or 5 of those passes were drops, which would have dramatically changed his his completion percentage. But we're talking about a kid that's what, 7th game as a starter now. You gotta, obviously I understand the going through the performance with a fine-tooth comb, but I mean, you got to take the good with the bad when it comes to, a youthful quarterback. And I think there was far more good than bad. I don't really think there was bad this week. He showed he was tough as nails. He was getting pretty rough. He was getting roughed up when he would leave the pocket. I think the offensive line did a good job of protecting him this week too. I think there was a lot more good and bad. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important stat is a win. And I think, again, JJ's leading the team to victories when it counts. Beautiful throw to Donovan Edwards in the back of the end zone for touchdowns. And I think all it comes down to is just reps. He needs just more reps, more experience. I guess in a bad way, Michigan being so good in the running game is kind of, I wouldn't say negatively affected his growth, but it's certainly stunted it a bit in terms of him getting more opportunities to showcase his arm. I think if Michigan had a little bit better success down the field, which again, this is just nitpicking at this point, the downfield success would be a little better. I think the narrative changes slightly, but Concern, absolutely not. I'd be concerned absolutely if they were losing, but they're not. They're winning. Michigan is running the ball like 8,000 times in a game, so you're really limited in terms of what JJ can do in different situations. So, as much talk as we had during the preseason about, is this the year that Michigan's going to open up the passing game? I don't think it's to no fault of McCarthy's. I just think it's just a game plan that Harbaugh wants to do, and that's always what he's going to be. But not concerned. Definitely think JJ's got the goods. Just needs more time on task. I mean, I think that's the big phrase Harbaugh likes to use for all the guys who are relatively raw in terms of experience. Just needs to get more experience, and as long as they're successful running the ball, that typically means they're going to be having leads. So, he hasn't been in a crunch time situation yet, so to speak. But I don't think they'll need to. But I think a lot of boxes were ticked off. I think he showcased a lot more good than bad. And again, the bad was few and far between. I'm not sure if I'd even call it bad. So overall, I would consider that Rutgers game a highly successful game. Coming out of a halftime deficit like they did, defense helps you out, but you got to finish the game as an offense. And I think JJ showed a lot of guts, showed me who he was as a tough as nails dude at multiple points throughout the game. So give him a ton of credit, and concerned not one bit.
Let's shift the talk to the receivers, which is the other side of the coin here, because I think the conversation has been, whose fault is it? Is it JJ's fault or the receiver's fault? How many times have we asked that question this season? The answer is several. And we did on Saturday with Andrell Anthony and the throw to him, which I thought was kind of just overthrown personally. But, I kind of missed it too. He was wide open as far as I could tell. I was at a wedding, so it was a bit in and out for me in the first half. But Brock, the receivers just – the leading receiver on Saturday was Donovan Edwards, who I know is a threat and would be anywhere. But outside of him, Ronnie Bell, 2 catches, 43 yards. Cornelius Johnson, 3 catches, 18 yards, a touchdown, but he had a big drop. Tyler Morris got some time with the catch. Andrell still only had 1 catch. Schoonmaker was banged up. I understand Michigan's a run-first team. I understand Michigan is going to continue to be that style. It's what works for them. It's what's winning them ball games. They're controlling the clock. They're forcing their tempo onto other teams. They're making 7-0 leads seem like 20,000-0 leads because of how long they can keep the ball and possess it and methodically drive down the field. So all of those things are true, and there's no discrediting it. But in my opinion, Michigan eventually is going to have to pass the ball first to win the national championship. It might not happen. It might not even happen against Ohio State. I don't know. But it will happen against one of the SEC teams. And when it does, I don't know if this group of wide receivers can get the job done. Like, I don't think they've had enough separation at times. The releases haven't been great for them at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if there's a true NFL wide receiver in this current rotation. I think Andrell Anthony has the best shot, but he's getting 1 catch, maybe a game. And I understand they're winning ball games, so I'm not taking away from their strategy. I'm just questioning the fact that we have not seen anything, zero out of these receivers. That's encouraging to me. Like, there has not been anything that's happened this season where I've been like, okay, these guys are good. Maybe it's because they haven't been asked upon. Like, maybe it's because they haven't needed that moment. They haven't had to pass the ball that much. They've blocked like unbelievably well, so I'll give them that. The perimeter blocking is insane. But the problem here is they're just not jumping off the page at all. It's just one of those things where does Michigan's receiving core hold it back come playoff time if they can get there?
Yeah, and going back to your original question there, if I had to place the blame on either the receivers or on JJ, I think I'd have to place it on the receivers. And I saw a stat, I think it was last night or early this morning, and based on what you were just reading off there, it kind of confirmed it. Michigan put up 52 points and their receivers had a combined 7 catches, I believe it is. Like that's just unheard of. Like you said, 2 from Ronnie, 3 from
right.
Cornelius, and then 1 from Anthony. And
and Cornelius had 7. His longest catch was 7 yards, and he had 2 yards after the catch.
Right. And so I'm starting to think this is just what Harbaugh's going to do. He's going to get these offensive linemen built up and just beat you in the trenches for 60 minutes, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. And you can have a 5-star quarterback, and you can have these great receivers who are quick and who are athletic and have all this big play potential, and he's still going to run it. And I think you're right, though. I think that if Michigan wants to win the national championship, they're going to have to be able to air it out eventually. And it may not be against Ohio State. It won't be against Nebraska. It probably won't be against Illinois. And even if you go into Columbus and beat Ohio State just by running the ball and running for 300 yards, you're in the playoff. And congrats, here's Georgia again, who made you look like a middle school team last year. So I just think that they're going to have to throw it eventually, and the receivers are going to have to step up. Anthony did a great job of getting open on that one deep ball, and McCarthy overthrew him, and I get that. But, I mean, Michigan's run game, you would have to think, is going to be stopped at one point. It hasn't yet, but you think it will be eventually. And so the receivers got to be ready for when that game comes, and they're going to have to step up.
So we got a comment here from Mark. Short and intermediate passes are still enough of a threat to keep the 2 high defenses honoring deep ball. We doing all right. I mean, it's fine. Like, I don't have any problem with what Michigan's done. Like, Michigan, and I still am on the side of the coin where it's like, this isn't Michigan's game plan for Ohio State. This isn't Michigan's game plan for a potential playoff game. We still haven't seen that game plan yet. They haven't needed it. I mean, they played to just get the hell out of there against Michigan State. They had no interest in any. We were all talking all week about how that was just going to be like, oh, well, Michigan's just going to, and it wasn't like we were predicting this, but like this was the talk of the town. Oh, well, Michigan's just going to unleash the dogs. Like they're just going to let it all out on Saturday. They're so much better than them and every faster than everywhere. They're just going to do whatever they want. Michigan State secondary sucks. JJ's game, blah, blah, blah. And they did exactly what they always do. They just ran the ball until death. And then the clock ended, and that was the game. And they did not care about the score, and they never do. And that's one thing people just have to understand. Now, it's like people who are not within like the Michigan spectrum and don't understand that when Michigan wins games 27-3, like most teams would win them like 63-3. Michigan just opts to like not score and run like 18 play 9-minute drives. Like it's just it's what they do, and like it works for them in games like that. And I have no problem with what they do. But if you look at Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson, and Roman Wilson and tell me that those 3 guys are going to be able to counter press man from Georgia, when the time comes where they're going to have to pass the ball, like we haven't had anything to prove that's going to work. Like I know JJ's awesome in his skill set and in his physical skill set, but like we haven't seen it in game yet. And we've been saying, oh, it's going to come, but like it's week. This is their 10th game, right? So I mean, we're getting to the nitty gritty here where it's going to have to happen. And I get it. He's young. He's 19 years old. Like most kids aren't going to be that good yet. I'm just saying we've been discussing the anticipation of his becoming, and it just hasn't occurred yet. And we're 9 games into this whole thing. So I wonder if it's going to happen this year. And if it does, is it like a miraculous triumphant coming out party against Ohio State, against Georgia? I don't know. I mean, that would be awesome, right? Like that would be a storybook ending, yada, yada. I just don't know if that's how it's going to go. So that's where the question kind of gets brought up. It's not that I'm like hating on how Michigan runs offense. I think Michigan runs arguably from a clock management and a game perspective. Like that's one of the smartest game plan like layouts from week to week in the country. Like Ryan Day is opting to score 50 plus points in a game outside of just getting out of there sometimes. Right. And I mean, like, sure, that's good. That's fine. That helps your college football playoff stakes. But I think Michigan's like, we're already hurt enough. And like, let's just go home. Like, let's win the game and let's call it 3 possessions of 3 possessions. We're happy. We don't need style points. That's just who they are. I mean, they show up to press conferences in blue collar work shirts. So I have no problem with the offense. I don't think what they've done is wrong. I don't think it's not going to work against Ohio State. I just wonder if the passing game is ever called upon, what's going to happen. I guess there's only one way to find out about that, and eventually we will. Let's go to the Big Ten. We're just looking at what happened this week in the conference and who won and who didn't. There were some surprises in the conference this week, obviously. So I'm going to ask a question to you guys as we kind of get towards the end of the show here. And I'll ask you guys both the same question. We'll start with Josh. What was the bigger surprise to you this weekend? Ohio State struggles with Northwestern, granted the wind and the conditions of that game, or was it Michigan State's win over Illinois? Which one was the bigger surprise? Ohio State struggles with 1-7 Northwestern, or Michigan State's win over Illinois?
Man, Ohio State loves a good weather excuse, don't they? They haven't seen a weather adversity that they didn't not like. So I guess Michigan State's win over Illinois is the biggest surprise, because the way Illinois had been playing this year, it's like they just grind you to a pulp. I mean, it's very similar to what Michigan does, except not on that level. I guess Michigan State coming off the week that they had, everyone's talking about adversity. Well, oh yeah, poor Michigan State, the self-inflicted adversity that they had, poor them. Here's my pity party for them. None. But it's I guess Illinois losing is the big one. I mean, yeah, you'd like Illinois to be a one-loss team coming into the game against Michigan, and they're still ranked, so they've got a chance to, it still has a chance to be a top 25 matchup. But them losing to Michigan State, how they did, and especially Bielema's excuses after the game saying Michigan State was fake being hurt to slow their tempo down. Thought that was a little BS excuse there, but yeah, I think definitely. I mean, Ohio State is. I'm not going to say it. I'll wait until Ohio State week to say it. But they're beatable. They're beatable. They're not this world beater team. I think they're beatable. I said before the year Michigan is going 12-0, and I'm sticking with it the rest of the way. Michigan is going into Columbus and beating them. I'm sticking my neck out here. I'm sticking with it. But yeah, Illinois losing. Probably the biggest surprise, a bummer, but it is what it is. The Big Ten stinks, so it is what it is. It's the big 2, little 10, as it always has been, and always should be. So yeah.
All right, Brock.
Yeah,
same question.
Okay, I was really surprised. I was sitting on the couch watching Illinois somehow blow it against Michigan State. I had no anticipation at all that Michigan State was going to win that game after everything that happened last week, and just I felt like it was going to be really hard for them to refocus and go in there and beat Illinois, but they did. But I was still more surprised with Ohio State struggling against Northwestern. I had some business to take care of on Saturday morning, and I wasn't able to watch the first half of the Ohio State Northwestern game. And I pull out my phone and check the score, and it's 7-7 at halftime. I was fully expecting it to be, 42-3, and Stroud has 500 yards and 8 touchdowns or whatever, and they're just piling it on like normal. But I was pretty shocked to see that it was 7-7, and Northwestern's not good, and maybe Ohio State is just soft with the weather and everything like that, and maybe we'll get a little bit of that in Columbus on the 26th. Who knows? But I was pretty shocked to see that game was even remotely close.
All right. Well, Michigan will play Nebraska on Saturday, and we'll have all of that preview content out for you this week. And you can listen to Rise to the Victors, which is what I accidentally introduced this show as initially. This is Rise to the Victors, not Hail to the Podcast. So you can listen to that on Thursday, and we'll have that out for you guys then, and you can get some Nebraska content. Nebraska is coming off of a loss to Minnesota. They were up 10-0, blew the lead. It's kind of like par for the course for Nebraska. Nebraska is probably a much worse matchup for Michigan than Rutgers was. Rutgers really wasn't like a tough matchup, but they had some counters, especially on defense. I think, although it looked like the opposite. I mean, Michigan kind of made Rutgers look like a head, a lifeline offensively in the first half, and they were one of the worst offenses in the country coming in. So thought that was pretty sus. But obviously, the second half went how it went, and Michigan adjusted. So players of the game from the last week, or from Saturday, I should say. I know we went with Mike Barrett on defense, but offensively, where do you guys lean there? I mean, I think you just got to go with the backs, right? Like at this point, it's pretty much every week it's going to be Blake or Donovan or a combination of both. Like it's just what Michigan has become, and they're good. I mean, they're doing. I mean, Michigan was missing Ryan Hayes, another starting offensive lineman was out for Michigan, which has been something that they got rid of for a couple of weeks there, but now back on the injury bug there in the O-line. And even with that being said, and without the starting left tackle, I mean, those two still went for 109 yards apiece.
Yeah.
We talk about how Michigan's passing game kind of like sets you back on national championship expectations, maybe because you don't know how it's going to go against a better team, right? But then you watch those running backs and you're like, all right, I don't know who can tackle them, especially Blake. I mean, his vision is just, it's absurd. The run he had on Saturday night where he was, again, like surrounded by 3 tacklers and still found a way to bounce out. It's just, he has an absurd ability to run the football. I mean, he's just doing things absurdly well. Highest graded running back in the country, that he's held that or been second in that ever since the beginning of the season. I think he's got a pretty firm grasp on the top spot right now. At this point in time, boys, I mean, Ohio State has looked far more beatable than Michigan has.
Yep.
And I know that Ohio State had that unreal run where they just ran through everybody to start the season, as they always do. But they're starting to look a bit more human. They're struggling to run the ball in the back-to-back weeks to the degree that they should want to run it. I know C.J. Stroud looked like a dual threat on Saturday in the wind. And I guess I don't know how much to buy into a game where there's 40-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, I understand Ohio State has excuses, but like 40-mile-an-hour winds are 40-mile-an-hour winds. Like, I don't know who's throwing in that, to be honest with you. But they made it work and they won the game, so I guess that's all that counts, right? But we still have a while to Ohio State. Michigan still has to beat Nebraska. Michigan still has to beat Illinois. Nebraska on the docket this week. We'll talk about that on the show later this week. But anything else, guys? Anything you want to add in for anything that you learned? I guess one final word on the Michigan-Rutgers game.
Yes, I want to give massive props to Sharon Moore. It's time to talk about him as a elite developer of talent. You're talking about a guy, Jeff Percy, who comes in, basically a late week. Oh, hey, by the way, you're starting this week, out of nowhere. And then comes in and does a really good job. I mean, you didn't hear his name called once all game. And, as a guy on the offensive line, typically if your name's not being called upon, unless you're absolutely just mauling dudes, it means you're doing your job. Unless the only time you get called out is when you're doing a horrific job. And that's certainly not the case. So again, we're talking about just plug and play guys. It's El Hadi earlier in the year came in and was good, had his moments where they were a little iffy, but again, these young guys that have zero experience, they're just plugging in guys and they're doing great. Carson Barnhart and Trente Jones really coming along and really developed really strongly before his injury. Michigan hopes to have him back this weekend, by the way. So I don't know how that dynamic between him and Carson Barnhart is going to work, but elite developer of offensive linemen. Not enough credit can be given his way. At this point, you just hope that Harbaugh can hold on to him for another year or two until someone's going to come knocking on his door to make him a head coach. I'm not too worried about him, getting a coordinator job because I think Michigan can match whatever he's getting offered, and he already has a co-offensive coordinator title already. But Sharon Moore, just elite as it gets. I can talk about all these other guys too. Mike Elston, huge addition on the defensive side. But, today my credit goes to Sharon Moore. Take a bow. Jeff Percy, take a bow. Excellent game, for your first career start, basically being thrown out to the Wolves. So great. Yeah, just a great. It just shows just how in good hands that the offensive line is, and in the future, they can recruit whoever the hell they wanted, and you won't see me question it one bit because they're just churning out dudes. Not necessarily NFL talent, but dudes that just make it work. I mean, the running game is just making it work. So, kudos to him.
All right. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at Michigan Rivals and on Instagram, Maize Blue Review, TikTok, Maize and Blue Review. Let's see if there's any more comments before we go. If you guys have any questions, now is the time. If I could get them to load, that would be fantastic. Yeah, Will Johnson will certainly be a key defensive back moving forward. He looked excellent on Saturday. I mean, I know he had a pick, so the stat sheet says that, but just in general, I mean, he looked real good. I know he had a moment, but he looked real good. He just looks like he fits the part, and he has since he got here. I mean, that hit on Sean Clifford was kind of like, all right, this guy's definitely should be in the field in some capacity. Let's see. I can't see OSU being ranked higher than us after that Northwestern performance. Their run game is broken. It won't matter much because I think we will beat them this year at Columbus. Very optimistic. Well, if you can be very optimistic about that, then I wish I had your cojones. I do not, though, unfortunately. So I've watched that game one too many times, my friend. Injury updates. I know you mentioned Trente Jones is expected back. Anything else on that front, Josh?
I mean, from what I was told earlier in the week, none of it really seems serious. A lot of guys were just, I mean, I didn't get specifics on what was going on, but, I got the term banged up a lot. So, I mean, guys were banged up. You saw Mozzie Smith in there a little bit. He was on a pitch count, essentially. Didn't look right. Just guys just banged up and not being able to go. It was kind of a mixture of, resting guys because they were just a little too banged up and guys not being able to play regardless of the opponent. So I'm optimistic that, at least maybe some of them come back. I know Jim Hart said he expects Roman Wilson and Ryan Hayes back next week for Nebraska. It's possible maybe one or two guys get sat out again just for the safety, but not really any major concerns. And I'm going to respond to that Keegan comment too. Again, I didn't hear anything, that was wrong with Keegan. I know obviously he got into the injury tent and was limping around a bit, but at that point of the game, they elected to sit him, just because it was out of hand. So I don't know if he's not okay, but I usually get somewhat of a concern text after games if someone ends up getting hurt, but I didn't get anything from Keegan. So I'm just going to assume that he's fine. Just a little sore, but overall, wrapping it all up in terms of all the players, I'm not overly concerned about anyone. Trente Jones is trending in the right direction, might play, might not. It's leaning towards maybe. Some guys will probably be back, some might not, but again, they're not going to expect it to miss a whole heck of a lot of time. So overall, not concerned. Things should be good once Ohio State rolls around, barring, knock on wood, nothing else happens against these next two games.
All right, that does it for us tonight. We will talk to you guys later this week. Make sure you check out Dennis Fithian's live show every day at 1 p.m. Good afternoon, Michigan football, here on our YouTube on Maize and Blue Review. You can also come over and join us. You can see below on the ticker, michigan.rivals.com. Come discuss the Wolverines in the Den, our premium message board, all kinds of stuff to do there. There's everything, community, there's intel, stories, features, film. You can learn about football, you can read about football, and you can find out about football, basketball, women's basketball, hockey, baseball. The list goes on. We got it all covered. Come join us at Maize and Blue Review. Link is in the description below. We'd love to have you. That does it for us tonight here for Rise to the Victors. That's Brock. That's Josh. I'm Brandon. Michigan.rivals.com. We'll see you soon over there. Have a great night.